And Jesus said to them, "For a little while longer the light is among you. Walk while you have the light." We have to bear the image of God. We have to bear and be representatives, ambassadors in this world. Worship is not only something that we do, but it is who we are. We have to be in God's presence to even see what the judgment is, to even judge righteously. We have to be in His presence. He said, "Let your eyes look with equity. You have tried my heart. You have visited me by night. You have tested me, and you find nothing. I have purposed that my mouth will not transgress." Hello everyone, and thank you for joining me for this next edition of Matchlite. I am your host, Cre, and I'm so happy you were able to join me today for this 8-minute discussion. If you're watching me on video, hello. This is my first time doing video, and if you're listening to me on the podcast, hello to you too. Today I just wanted to take a few minutes to talk to you a little bit about something that I was reading in the Bible, and I think it is so relevant to us today. In the Bible, I was reading Numbers, which was the Torah portion last week, Numbers chapter 13 through 15. And if you don't know about the Torah portion, it just takes the five books of Moses, in the beginning of the Bible, and it takes them and divides them into different scriptures for each week. And that is called the Torah portion. So what I found interesting about last week's Torah portion is about, sometimes we do things, God tells us to do things, and then we rebel, and then we try to be obedient, but He's not with us because the time has already passed and the season has already passed from what He's told us to do. Let me share a little story with you today. So in the book of Numbers, chapter 13 through 15, so the children of Israel were in the wilderness. They were wandering around in the wilderness, and God told Moses to send 10 spies from the tribes to go into the promised land to spy it out, to see if they could overtake them, right? To see. And so basically 8 of the spies came back and said, "Oh no, we don't believe God. No, we can't overtake them. They're big. They're huge. We just don't agree. We don't believe." And then 8 of them came back and said that. But 2, Joshua and Caleb, which my sons are Joshua and Caleb, I love it. Joshua and Caleb, they came back and said, "No, the Lord is with us. We will overtake this land." And they came with a good report. But one thing that I noticed is that not only did they give a bad report, the ones that didn't believe God, but guess what they did? They actually sowed dissension and division in the camp. So what did they do? They went around the camp and they told everyone that basically we cannot defeat them. We need to go back and return to Egypt. And if you go to Numbers chapter 14, I'm going to open up my little tablet here because I have this here on my tablet. It's a little tablet stand. And he talks about it in Numbers 14:3. The 8 spies says, after they went through the land, then people started saying, "Let's appoint a leader and return to Egypt. Let's appoint someone and we'll return to Egypt instead." And now I want to bring it back home to us. Don't we do that, guys? Just when something gets hard, we say, "Oh no, let me go back to where I used to go. Let me go back to where I used to be. Let me go back to that man that I used to be with. Let me go back to that woman that I used to be with that wasn't my wife. Let me go back to the things of old because the things of new are getting very hard." No, that is something that we cannot do. We have to keep pressing forward. And what I found interesting was that they not only didn't have faith, but that they started sowing division, 2 visions, right? They started sowing the two visions among the camp. So now you had these people who believe that God can make it happen. Then you had these people who say, no, I don't think God is able. And you know what God said? The Father said, that's it. I'm done. I'm going to wipe them all out. And Moses pled with the Lord, and he said, no, Father, don't do that, because your name is holy and people need to hear that you saved your children, not that you brought them in the wilderness to die. No, they need to, for your name's sake, Lord. He said, for your name's sake, please. And so the Father said, okay, well, what I'm going to do is they're going to wander, anyone that is 20 and up, they're going to wander in the wilderness for 40 years. For each day that they spent in that land, the land that God promised them, for 40 days they spent. He said 1 year for each day that they spent. And so that is what happened. They wandered in the wilderness. And something that I didn't notice before was that God is a merciful God. And if you go to Numbers 14, basically the people of Israel said they woke up. And so God told Moses this at night, and the people of Israel woke up. So they woke up and they said, all right, Lord, I'm sorry, we sinned. We're ready to go. and Moses told them, don't you go up there to that land. God is no longer with you. God is no longer with you. And they were like, pretty much what? No, God is with us. He said, don't go. Don't go. And so what happened when they went? They were defeated. And so he said, don't go. And that is something that I want to encourage you and admonish you today. When the Lord tells us to do something, even when it seems silly, I know it's hard sometimes to obey. Sometimes we can rationalize it out, right? We can reason our way out of the situation. But ultimately, there is a season and there is a time for everything. Ecclesiastes chapter 3 says it very well. There is a season and there is a time for everything. And God's appointed time is God's appointed time. You may not have his grace in that new situation that you're trying to go to, because he had already told you to get out of that situation 10 months ago. He will remove his protection from you in that situation when you don't follow him the first time. He can change his mind and he can come back and he can restore you, but there will be consequences for your disobedience. So I just encourage you today, after reading that story, I myself had to examine myself to say, oh my goodness, Lord, is there something that I am supposed to do that I didn't do? I had to examine myself as well. And so I think it's important for you guys and important for me to remember that when it's the Lord's time, when he tells us to do something, even if by impression or by explicit audio, that we need to do it. We need to rely on the Holy Spirit, and we need to rely on our God, because he will never leave us nor forsake us, and he will never fail us. And Yeshua is giving the instructions. He will never give something that the Father didn't say, and the Holy Spirit will never tell us something that Yeshua didn't say. So we have to be in connection at all times, because obedience is better than sacrifice, guys. And I'm telling you, when I read this story, there's so many highlights that the Holy Spirit highlighted to me that I had never seen before. And I was like, whoa, I didn't even realize they were sowing division in the land. So you had two visions, right? You had the vision of God and the vision of the enemy. The enemy was trying to discourage people, while Caleb and Joshua were trying to encourage people and to show them that God has a perfect vision and a plan for their lives. So I want to encourage you that God has a vision and plan for your life. I encourage you right now to don't give up. Even when the situation looks bad, don't give up. Keep pressing forward, because guys, this is a marathon. This is not a sprint. So I thank you guys. Thanks so much for joining me. Our 8 minutes is up. It goes by so fast to me. But anyhow, Thank you so much for joining me today. It was a pleasure. And I thank you for listening to this podcast, and I hope to hear your comments. And go back and go on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, anywhere that you listen to podcasts, and find us, Matchlite Pod and 8. And I'll see you next week. Have a great day, everyone. Bye-bye.